Hi guys, UP assignment, one of my subscribers asked me to do a video on how your owl can die the first few days you bring it home, and also how to make your house owl proof. So I guess that's what we're doing today. So here's the first mistake a lot of people make. Your baby owl is going to eat little pieces of one-day-old chicks, mice and rats. And people who have never had an owl just assume that baby owls will stop eating when they're full. But that's actually not the case. A baby owl will keep eating until its stomach can't handle it anymore, and then it will just drop dead. So in order to avoid that, what you should do when you feed your owl is once in a while you're going to feel the belly. You're going to feel right here in between the legs. And if the belly is really tight, then you should stop immediately, because that means your owl is full. If it's not tight yet, then you can keep feeding them. And the way I learned this was by my mentor telling me, oh, feel the stomach now, it's really tight, so now we should stop. And that's why I will always advise people to please first go see a falconer who's willing to guide you in the process of raising your owl. Because I can tell you what it feels like, but you don't actually know until you felt it, I think. So that's number one. Then number two, when your owl is little, it's going to be pretty naked, and it doesn't gonna have feathers all of a sudden. It is first going to grow feather pens. But these feather pens are really fragile, so you can't just pick your owl up any way you would like, and you will need to pick it up to feed it. So it's really important that you pick it up the right way. And the way you should do this is you cannot grab it by the wings. You need to lay your hand under the belly like this and pick it up like that, so that the wings are free. Because if you just pick your owl up like this, one of the feather pens may break, and then your little owl will bleed to death in a matter of minutes. That's the second really important one. Number three is make sure your owl is warm enough. Make sure your house is warm enough, and if you see your owl shivering all the time, then what you can do is you can place a heat mat under the plastic box or the plastic container you are keeping it in. One thing you should know though, if your owl has just eaten, then it's normal that it's shivering. It's not because it's cold, it's shivering because it needs to digest all of the food that it has just eaten, and it's a lot to take for such a little small fragile bird. So if it's shivering right after it has eaten, then just don't worry, it's normal. But if it's 2 hours after the last meal and your owl is shivering, then it means you need to place a heat mat under the little box. Number four is drafts. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly in English, but what I mean by a draft is like when you open all of your windows and there's a lot of wind, but it's not just wind, you know, it's the kind of wind that makes even us humans sick. So often when we're in a draft, we catch a cold. And that's for us humans, we just get sick, we get a cold and we suffer for a few days and then we feel better. But for owls, it's really dangerous to catch a cold. They just die. So make sure there's not a draft in your house. Number five, and I don't know if you don't do this, your owl is going to die, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to do well. And this is going to sound funny, but your little owl needs a little blanket or a little teddy bear. I don't know why, but it's actually true. When Lucky grew up, she had this little blanket, and I'll show you a picture right away of her with her blanket. And if I had to pull the blanket out of the box to wash it, she would be totally lost. She would be like, where's my blanket? Where's my blanket? And I think the blanket or the teddy bear replaces the mother. And I think if you don't put it in there, the owl may die of loneliness. I think it's actually possible. I have no experience with this because my mentor told me to put a blanket in or a little teddy bear. And yeah, I actually noticed that she cuddles with the blanket, and that if you take it away, she was actually super sad and super lonely. So yeah, that's what you should do as well. And I think these are the most common mistakes people make, or the most important things you should give attention to. And then to answer the second question, how to make your house owl-proof. Well, you don't need to make your house owl-proof, because at first you're going to keep your baby owl in a small plastic container without a lid, obviously. And on the bottom you're going to put kitchen towels like this. And then when it starts growing and it starts outgrowing its box, you're going to buy a bigger plastic container. I'll show you a picture in a few seconds. And then you're going to put biological cat litter on the bottom. And as your owl starts to grow, I think it's after 2 months or so, it will start to try to jump out of the box. And this is the cruel part. I hated this part of the growing process. You then need to put a litter on the box, and obviously you're going to place the lid, like, you're not going to close the box, you're going to leave a little hole, and you're just going to place a book on the lid so that if the owl jumps, it won't push the lid off. But yeah, this is really normal in the growing process, and I thought it was kind of cruel. Like, I would hear her jump all night against the lid of the box, and I was like, oh my god, she's so gonna get a concussion or something. I felt really guilty, but that's a normal part of the growing process. And then when your owl starts sleeping while standing, then you are going to buy like this bow, so it can sit on the bow, because at first your little owl will just lay there. It won't be standing, it will just be sitting on its ass or laying on its belly. And then as they become adults, they start sleeping while standing. And when you notice that they are starting to stand at night instead of just laying there, then you can buy a bow. I'm going to show you my bow in just a few seconds. And you are going to put anklets on and long laces. These things are long laces, and these things are the anklets. And what's really important is that when you put the long lace through the anklet, that you go from the outside to the inside and not the other way around, because if you do that and your bird flies off, it will break its legs, so we don't want that. Yeah, so that is how you're going to keep your owl. You are not going to keep your owl loose in the house all day, because they don't have a constrictor, so you can't teach them to go on a potty or something, or on a litter like you can teach cats. You can let her fly loose in the house for an hour or a few hours a day if you want. And then by making the house owl-proof, I would understand laying towels or blankets over the stuff that you don't want to be pooped on. And I'm obviously not going to let her fly around the house when I'm cooking, because then she might fly towards the stove and burn herself. So really, you don't need to make your house owl-proof, because if you are going to keep your bird inside the house and not in a cage outside, you are going to keep it on this bow. And I don't know what the correct term in English is, but in Dutch it's called a springel. And I'll show you in a few seconds what it's going to look like. So this is what the springel looks like. This is what the bow looks like. And we have this little ring right there where we are going to attach the cord that is attached to the long laces, and that way your bird is secured, but it can still move freely. So that is how you are going to keep your bird, so there's no need to make your house owl-proof.